Stop believing the tragic story of Medusa you learned on social media, because the most famous version of her myth is actually a lie that is 2,000 years old. You've likely heard the heart-wrenching tale. Medusa was a beautiful priestess of Athena who was assaulted by Poseidon in the goddess's temple, only to be victim-blamed by Athena and cursed with snake hair. It is a story of injustice that resonates deeply with modern audiences. But what if I told you that in the original Greek myths, absolutely none of that happened? The truth about Poseidon and Medusa isn't a story of a fallen priestess, but of a primordial monster whose origin was rewritten for a political agenda. To understand the real story, we have to look at the version you probably know best. This narrative paints Poseidon as the villain and Medusa as the ultimate victim. It suggests that her petrifying gaze was a defensive weapon given to her after the trauma. It makes Athena look petty and cruel. This is the version that dominates pop culture, from movies to tattoos. But there is a massive problem with this narrative. It wasn't written by a Greek during the height of the belief in the Olympians. It was written by a Roman poet named Ovid, roughly 700 years after the original myths were established. If you go back to the archaic Greek sources, specifically Hesiod's Theogony, written around 700 BC, the story is shockingly different. In the original Greek canon, Medusa was never a human woman. She was born a monster. She was one of the three Gorgon sisters, children of the ancient sea deities, Phorcys and Keto. In this older version, there was no temple, no priesthood, and no curse from Athena. Medusa and her sisters were born with wings, tusks, and terrifying visages that could turn men to stone, simply because they were chthonic entities of the earth and sea. And what about Poseidon? In Hesiod's account, there is no assault. The text simply states that Poseidon and Medusa lay together in a soft meadow amid the spring flowers. It describes a consensual, or at least neutral, union between two ancient sea forces. From this union, Medusa became pregnant with Pegasus and Chrysaor. There was no drama, no punishment, and certainly no transformation from beauty to beast. She was a monster from birth, and her destiny was always to be slain by Perseus. So, how did we get from a born monster to the tragic priestess we discussed today? The answer lies in a political smear campaign that changed mythology forever. But to understand why the story shifted so violently, we have to look at the motivations of the man who rewrote it. Ovid, the Roman poet, wasn't just recording history, he was challenging authority. Living under the rule of Emperor Augustus, Ovid often used myths as allegories to criticize the abuse of power by the elite. By changing Medusa from a born monster into a human victim, Ovid wasn't just trying to entertain, he was making a point about how the gods, who represented the ruling class, treated mortals. In his version, Poseidon represents the unchecked desire of the powerful, and Athena represents the cold, unyielding nature of the state that punishes the victim rather than the perpetrator. Ovid deliberately made the story tragic to evoke sympathy for Medusa and disdain for the gods. He humanized the monster to villainize the authority figures. You aren't reading an ancient religious text, you are reading ancient political satire. This completely changes how we view the feud between Poseidon and Athena regarding Medusa. In the Greek tradition, Athena helped Perseus kill Medusa, not because she hated the Gorgon personally, but because killing monsters is what heroes do, and Athena is the patron of heroes. The personal vendetta, the jealousy over Medusa's beauty, and the temple desecration were all Roman inventions added centuries later to spice up the narrative. It is also fascinating to see how art evolved alongside these stories. In archaic Greek art, the Gorgon is grotesque, a round face with a tongue sticking out and bulging eyes. It was used as an apotropaic symbol, meaning an image used to ward off evil. You would put a Gorgon face on your door or shield to scare away bad luck. She wasn't a figure of pity, she was a figure of terrifying protection. It was only later, as the Roman narrative took hold, that art began depicting Medusa as a beautiful woman who just happened to have snakes for hair. The tragedy of Medusa is compelling, and it speaks to real human experiences of trauma and injustice. However, historically speaking, blaming Poseidon for ruining Medusa is based on a fictional retcon of the character. The original Medusa was a powerful, terrifying force of nature who needed no sympathy. She was a mother of winged horses and a guardian of the underworld. The myth you know is a literary masterpiece, but it is not the original truth. Now that you know the difference between the Greek monster and the Roman victim, I want to hear from you. Which version of the myth do you find more compelling? Ovid's tragedy of a punished priestess, or the original concept of Medusa as a primal, ancient force of nature? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below,